Alright, let's get started with fixing this issue here. So the first thing we want to go ahead and do is just go ahead and make sure we actually import this anchor, which will then go ahead and fix this. There we go. And then the second thing I want to go ahead and do is I want to create a tweet model. So let's go ahead and say php make model tweet. And so with that created, let's go ahead and start out by adding in a UUID in here. We also want to go ahead and make sure we have a text of body, which can be nullable. The reason for this is because when you retweet something, we want to store it as a tweet but without any content, and when you quote something, we want to store it as a tweet with a quote but also have a relationship to the tweet we quoted. So we're gonna have a user ID, we're gonna have an original tweet ID, and again this is the one we're gonna be using for either quotes or retweets. We're also in this case gonna go ahead and make sure we have an enum. So let's go ahead and make an enum here called tweet type. Inside tweet type, we want to make sure this is a string. We want a case in here for retweet. For quote. And for tweet. We also want a static function in here, which is going to be for values, returning an array column of the cases where we grab the value. So what we can go ahead and do in here now is we can go ahead and essentially say tweet type values. Perfect. So with that got ahead and sorted now, all we need to do now is we have these relationships set up, we have the user ID. The only other thing I can think of we need for this is essentially just a parent ID. The reason for that is because we want to be able to have comments, and we're going to be using a package to deal with the comments and so on a tweet. So we're just going to be using a simple adjacency package, by the way, for this. So let's go ahead and migrate this. Perfect. Okay, so with that sorted, we can now go into our tweet model. In here, we want to just go ahead and say protected guarded empty array. We want to have a protected, in this case, just a function in here where we're gonna say this is a static one. Upon booting, we want to set the UID in here. So that's just what we're creating it. We also, for now, is gonna create a user relationships. There we go. So with that sorted, we now have everything we need for the model. So let's go ahead and also make sure we can go ahead and compose things, so we can create a text area and so on. So I'm going to say php Livewire make components and compose and compose. Inside this compose one here, we want to go ahead and essentially just set up the very basic of our compose. So for now, this is going to be a form with a class in here. In this case, we're just going to add this in here to save some time. So essentially, we're just adding the borders in here for this. Then we're going to go ahead and have a flex shrink 0 and a pp4 and a p4. And in here, we're going to have an image with all user profile photo URL. We want a class in here to be inline block, and let's set the size here as well. And just set this as your profile picture. And then we want a width full in here with a padding of 2. And in here we're going to have a text area. And let's go ahead and make sure we add in here for now a class for the text area. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this off here, and I'm gonna add this to a new line. Let's go ahead and make sure we also add this here. We want to go ahead and add, in this case, a placeholder of what's happening, a label as well, an ID here for main compose, and this is just going to be from main compose tweet body. We want this to be a screen reader only, by the way. So with that sorted now, we should be able to go ahead and add a few more things below here. So after this, we essentially want to set up a few classes here for our buttons. So it should look something along the lines of if we include this inside our home page down here. Along these lines here. So it doesn't look perfect yet. We still need to address one or two issues here. So let's also make sure we actually get this text area in correctly here. So I think for this profile picture, we want to make sure that that's this inside with 12 of flex items top. And we want one div down here. Okay, so it's almost there now. So the only other thing we want to do in here for the profile picture just before we finish that off is make sure that it is rounded full. And we need to, for the text area as well, make sure that we add this on over here. And for this one, it should be flex items top. There we go. And there we go. Now it's taking up the whole space. So one of the things we want to do in here is we want to go ahead and make sure we add in ability to add profile, to add pictures essentially. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead in here and just add in an SVG file, which is for the picture. You can choose anything you want. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that we have this set to images. And then we're gonna add the tweet button as well, which is just gonna be down here. So there we go. So this looks roughly like what we want it to look like, a good tweet form here. You can go ahead and select the picture and so on. So another issue we will run into here is that we also want to be able to essentially auto resize this. So the way to do this is we can create a directive here. So if we go into our JS folder, which would be inside here, and inside here we want to create a folder called directives, and we want to call this auto resize.js. So in here we just want to have an export default. We want to have an element in here, and essentially we just want to be able to set the height to auto, put in a scroll height here, and then we want to resize the element. So the beautiful thing about Alpine.js is that we can just go ahead and register this directive as auto resize, then import auto resize, just like that. And all we should have to do now is inside our text area here, is just put in x auto resize. And there you go. So now it just automatically resizes the text area to the appropriate size, which is a really neat feature to have, and it's great to just add it in here as a directive instead of having to have a big X data up here or call a function or something along those lines. So this is something you can use on any component in your application super easily for a text area. Well, thank you very much for watching this video. That's all for this one, and I'll see you